Hey everybody, welcome to Coding Jitsu channel. In today's video, I have an exciting topic to cover. I'll be creating a Node.js Express application starter template using TypeScript. Now, if you're new here and unsure about TypeScript or JavaScript, don't worry. I have videos on those topics on my channel that you can check out to get up to speed. So, for an example, I just released Intro to TypeScript for new programmers just 4 days ago. And I also included a React example with TypeScript. So if you want to know how TypeScript works and TypeScript syntax, go check that video out. I also have JavaScript crash course video. So if you are unsure about JavaScript, you can go ahead and check those videos out as well. Both of the links for those videos are going to be in the description. All right, so quick disclaimer, this video is actually going to go ahead and quick speed, just because I want to show you how TypeScript, Node.js, and everything kind of come together and work and give you a starter template that you can download from GitHub. And GitHub link will be in the description as well. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start it. I'm going to create first a directory called Node Express TS. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and cd into that. Let's go ahead and open this up with my Visual Studio Code, like so. Let's go back to my terminal. And here I'm going to initialize a Node project. Now, if you're brand new to Node, you definitely need a Node installed in your computer because you're writing a Node Express application. Also, TypeScript kind of require Node to work. So you can go to nodejs.org and download if you don't have any. And let me show you how you can check whether you have Node installed in your computer or not. So you can just do node -- version, and it should give you a version number. So in my case, it's giving me version 16.19. So if it doesn't give you a version number, you can go to nodejs.org and download one for your machine. Okay, so since I have Node.js on my computer, I'm going to go ahead and initiate a Node project. The way I'm going to do it is called npm init. Init stands for initialization. I can pass in a -y flag, so it's going to give me a bare bones package JSON file, just like this one. If I go ahead, it gave me a name, it gave me a version number, it doesn't have a description. Anytime I can make this change here, just like I'm going to make a change here. So my entry point is actually going to be in the source directory that I'm going to create, and there I'll have an index.ts file. All right, let's go back to our terminal here. And now I'm going to install TypeScript. Node.js or browser, any environment that understands JavaScript don't really support TypeScript natively. So you have to have some sort of package installed in there. So TypeScript will compile everything and spit out JavaScript that would be understandable for the browsers. In case of Node, you have to download TypeScript and TS Node to run your TypeScript file. So that's what we're going to do in this right now. And since TypeScript is going to be as a dev dependency, so you don't really need TypeScript in your production, you just need the compile code in production, we will install every types as a dev dependency, okay? So this is how you're going to do this. So I'm going to say npm I, short for install, -D, that's basically telling Node that, hey, install this packages as a dev dependency and not a regular dependencies. And now I'm going to go ahead and here my autocomplete helping me. So I'm going to go ahead and install TypeScript. TS Node is actually a REPL, so it actually can run TS extension files. Node by itself cannot do that. And also for the types that we can use in our Node application. So we need to install these three: TypeScript, TS Node, and types-node. So let's go ahead and install this into our current directory. And then since it's going to be an Express application, let's go ahead and install Express. Now Express and .env, both will be using this one, right? Now, that's going to be just straight up dependency, okay? Now, I want to show you something. Let's go back to our browser here, and in our npm repository, Express, notice one thing. Here, you see that it is like the background is like white, and it's say DT, so dynamically typed. The package that you want to download that has this logo, white and say DT, it means that that particular package natively do not have TypeScript support. So in that case, if you could just click on here, Types Express for that particular package. So you have to install this one and the native package, both. So that's what we're going to do here. So we just installed native Express package. Now I'm going to go ahead and install, and as a dev dependency, types for Express. All right, let's go to our Visual Studio Code now. And here, let's take a look. We have our dev dependencies, Express, Node, TS Node, and TypeScript. And we have our .env and Express. Now, at this particular point, what we need is we need a tsconfig.json file. So we can run like this through our terminal. So we can do npx and space tsc --init. That would actually going to create a tsconfig.json file for me. But this is a huge file, as you can see here. There are a lot of options that is commented out, so we don't really need all of this option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy the options that I need for my compiler options from my reference point here. So let's go ahead and get all of this and then paste it here. All I'm saying here, the main thing to notice here is that our directory is going to be a dist folder. You can call it a build, whatever you like, but the output, the TypeScript compilation, and then it's going to spit out the JS file for you. It's going to be in a directory called dist. Source map, we have the target. This is ES next. I'm actually going to use ES6 for this, just to have the most compatibility with browsers, module, common.js, and then there are other options as well. We also want to put true for strict mode. There another option that I want to include, which is include. So this include is basically telling tsconfig that, hey, just look at this particular files with JS extension and the TS extension that is inside the source folder and TS extension that is inside the test folder. Now, test folder, we are going to write some unit tests for this API. So we will have a test folder as well. So, okay, so we got our tsconfig file here. So let's go ahead and create our directory. So I'm going to go ahead and create our directory called source. Inside our source, we'll have our first file called index.ts. This is going to be our entry point for this API. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create, not inside source, but outside source. I'm going to create a file called test, where we will have the tests written for our APIs. Okay, so I'm also going to create a file called .env. And here you can put in your environmental variable that you don't want to share. In case in like API key or secret key or anything like that, you can put in here so that it's not like when you are pushing to GitHub, it's not going to be available publicly, right? Okay, so we have that. So right now we are going to go to our index.ts file, and we want to initialize. Actually, what we're going to do, we want to create another file called app.ts. And app.ts is actually going to combine all of our files. So our middlewares, our routes, everything will be combined into the app. And then inside index.ts, we're going to bring in app, and it's going to listen to it. Index is the one that will initiate the listening of the port and the API itself. So this is how I'm going to design this thing. So in our app.ts file, I'm going to import Express from Express, like so. I'm going to import, actually, I'm just going to initialize the app here, like that. And let's go ahead and do just a route. Let's go ahead and create a basic route. So when you hit the port, it's going to give you this particular option. So it's going to take a rec and res, and it's going to do like a res.json. Let's say a message. Hi. Okay, we're gonna save this one, and then we are going to export this file as an export default app. And here in our index file, we are going to import that app like so. And we have our .env file, so our index file. I'm going to go ahead and initialize our .env. Like that. So .env will have access to all the environment variables. I'm going to create a port variable here. That would be process.env port. So let's go ahead and create this port variable here, and then write, in my case, it's just going to be 8080. So get rid of this. So it's going to have port is 8080. And now let's go ahead and do app.listen. And it's going to listen to 8080 port that we just initialized here. And then let's have a callback function so we know that server is actually listening. So we're going to just console log. And pass in the port here. Let's go to our package JSON right now and show you how we can run our file. So here, I'm going to get rid of this test script as of right now and add a start script. And here, as you know, that we installed TS node. So we're gonna utilize this TS node here. And then I can do space and just dot. This dot basically means that it's going to take whatever we put in here in our main source. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. And now I'm going to go to my terminal and I'll go ahead and do npm start. And that should start, as you can see here, server is listening on 8080. So let's go ahead to our localhost 8080, reload. And as you can see here, we do have our message hi. So our route is working. But here's the thing. If I go to app.ts, none of these are all pure JavaScript. I'm not using our TypeScript. Yes, the file itself has a TypeScript extension, but I'm not actually utilizing the benefit that comes with TypeScript. So let's go ahead and utilize this one. So what we want to do, so as you can see, if I hover over this, rec and res, this is inferred type, even though we cannot see this, but these are the inferred type. As you can see, this rec is actually a type of request that's coming from Express, okay, because we installed Express types. Res is also has a response, capital response type, that is also coming for type Express. So yes, we are actually using TypeScript types. We just cannot see it. We can even make it even more. So let's say this are JSON message that we want to create. Let's go ahead and create an interface that will define how our message or return method should look like. So in that particular case, I'm going to create in this source folder another folder, and I'm going to call this interfaces. Okay, here I'm going to define our interface. So the first interface that I want to create is going to be an API response, right? Or let's call it like a message response, because this is just going to be a message, right? So message response.ts. And this is just going to export an interface. So we're going to create an interface which will be message response. And what this message response is going to be is going to have a property called message, which will be type of string. And let's export this one. And in our app.ts, let's go ahead and import this response here. So I'm going to go ahead and import message response, and that's going to be from interfaces message response. As you can see here, this is actually destructuring it. I can change this with just saying default, because this is the only thing it is exporting from this file. So I can actually use export default, and in this case, I can just get rid of this curly braces. No need to destructure. And this message response now is available. So now I can here put the type. So here the get wants this two types, right? What are we going to put in? So here is the generic types. So I will put the generic types, angle brackets, and the first one will have a type of object for the request. But for the response, I want this one to follow this interface. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and then create an object and do control space, it's actually going to give me the property that I need. So it's going to be a message, and if I hover over this, you can see that it's actually going to tell me message response.message is a string type. So here I can actually put, like, I cannot put 23, it's going to give me an error. The number is not assignable to type string. So this is TypeScript working. Okay, save. Great. All right, so we have our first app running. We have our first, we don't really have a route. Let's go ahead and create our first root route. Is actually working. So let's go ahead and create a routes folder to make things more organized. So I'm going to go ahead and not inside of interface, but rather source. I'm going to create a file called routes. It will have all the routes that we want to create. So inside this routes, I'm going to create a hello.ts route. And here, I'm going to go ahead and say import Express. We want to import Express from Express. And here, I'm going to Express actually give us an instance of the main app. As you can see here, we initiated app with Express, right? Express also give us a router, right? That is a mini version of the app. So I'm going to say express.router and then open parentheses like this. Now this router going to be our routes, okay? So here we are going to create router.get. So the moment we have the moment that goes to a router function, or like this slash path, we're going to return something. So we're going to say rec again and res again here, and TypeScript is going to infer that. So here I'm going to do res.json, and let's go ahead and just return hello, because it's a hello route. Okay, now I can go ahead and create a type for this one as well. So in this particular case, since it's not an object, I'm going to create hello response, and it's actually going to be just a string, not an object actually. So I'm going to get rid of this object and just say string. And here I'm going to pass this just like before. For rec, it's going to be open object, and for the response, it's actually have to be this type. So it has to be a string and not like a Boolean value or something. Then it's going to give you an error. So we have created our hello route. So let's go ahead and export default the router. Okay. And this router, we will now create another file, and we're going to call this index.ts. So inside this routes, index.ts is going to compile all the routes, and then we can import the whole routes folder to our app. So in the index.ts, we're going to import Express from Express, just like before. And here we are going to import our message response that we created from our interface, because we're gonna be using that. We are also going to import our hello route from our hello ts route, and like in the hello route, we're gonna create the router express.router like so, and here router.get, and here the response that we are going to send, we're going to utilize the same message response. So I'm going to say curly brace and message response, because I'm going to just send here rec and res, our res.json, and it's going to be what we need. Control space, we need the property called message, and that would be, I'm just going to say root API. All right. Okay, so the index, so basically when it's actually going to go to a path that we are going to actually initialize here, is going to give you this, and then from here we can actually do something called reader.use, and this one is actually going to be hello path, and I want to go to this hello. Okay, so let me show you, let me give you an example. So let me go back to my API, not API, but app.ts. And inside this app.ts, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and import API from and I'm going to actually call this routes from routes. Okay, we will use this. Routes from routes, and here we want to say, so it's going to go like step by step. So the first one, the first 8080, we're going to see the message hi. And then we are going to use this new path, and this is just a convention, API-v1. So API basically to mention that this is an API route, and v1 is, this is the version 1. So if you ever want to change down the road your API, you can now then rename it version 2. So here I'm going to, this route will have all the API, not API but routes, to this path. So what am I saying here? When I go to localhost 8080, it's going to hit this get request. Oh, yes, because I did not, as you can see here, it's actually giving me an error that module is not exported. So let's go ahead and export this, which I did not actually, default router. Export default router, and the error goes away. Okay, let's start again. So here is the get request when we first hit 8080. And after that, if we go and write API/v1, then it's going to go to the routes. Now this particular routes is actually going to go hit the index. So in the routes folder, it's automatically going to take the index file. And then the index file will give you this message. So it's in Express, it actually goes step by step, right? So it's going to give you this message, which is a root API. And then after that path, so you see that this is just one slash. This basically means whatever I'm using here just after this, I'm putting this 1/, right? So after this is going to go to routes, which is this one, index, with a slash, and then it's going to give you a root API. But after the slash, I'm saying hello, and hello path will have this route, which is a hello route, okay? Now, with this structure, you can come here in the routes and you can create as many routes as you want. You can create a user's route, you can create a post route, and it's just going to work because everything, and you can actually add like, let's say a router dot use, let's say if you have a users list that will show all the users, and then you can actually get all the users route from there. So that's the idea of this one. Okay, so we got the index, we got the hello ts app.ts. Let's go ahead and test it out. So I'm going to go ahead and kill this and rerun our npm start. It's going to go to 8080. Let's go to our and refresh this just for good measures. So 8080 is giving me the hi message. Now, if I do go to API v1, it should give me the root API message. As you know that this index is giving you root API. But after if I go /hello, if I go now /hello, it's going to give me a string. Just say hello because that's what it's returning. Okay, so it's actually working. Now, what if I put like gibberish, right? It's going to give me a cannot get. And that's what I don't want. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and handle this not found route. So we can do this with something called middleware that is available in our Express API. So let's go ahead and create some middlewares for this one. So now with our routes, and inside our source folder, I'm going to create a file called middlewares. And this is just going to be a TS file. Middlewares. So let's go ahead and do this. And just before I go and put some middlewares in here, I want to show you, because you see that every time I'm making any change or anything, my server, so let's go ahead and go to our routes and hello, and let's add some like exclamation. And if I save this, and if I go back to my server and put hello, you see that I do not see the exclamation. So if I refresh, still do not see, because the server is loading the previous state. It does not hot reload the changes. So to get hot reloading, what we can do is we can utilize a package called nodemon, which is a very popular package that works with our Node Express API. So what we're going to do, we are going to go ahead and npm install, again, as a dev dependency. We don't want nodemon in our production. I'm going to say nodemon. So let's go ahead and install that one. Go back to our package.json file here, and at this particular point, we are going to add a script that is going to be a dev script, and this dev script will run nodemon, and it should go to source and index.ts file. Make sure you write the whole in source index.ts and not the dot. All right, because nodemon needs to know the exact path of the file that they want to include. So I'm also going to add a few more script. So I'm going to add a script called build. If you remember, we did it in a tsconfig that if we build, everything will be just compiled and put this into a dist folder, right? So we want to do that as well. So if we do build, should just run tsc for us. That will compile everything. And then after the build, we are going to add another one, which is going to be a type check. Now, this particular command is going to run tsc -no emit. So what it's going to do is in my terminal, it's just going to see if I have any type related issues and not going to just compile that for me. Okay, so it's not going to compile everything, but just to check the type. So that could be helpful if I just don't want to build everything and wait for like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, but rather I just want to check whether there is any type issues on my code. And last one I want to add, in fact, let's add test at the end, because at that time I'm going to add our testing package as well. So instead of right now doing npm start, because npm start is actually going to be your production, so when you're deploying, they're going to run npm start, and then that's just a one-time thing. But for the development project where I need hot reloading, what I'm going to do is now npm run dev, and that should start my nodemon project. And as you can see, it run ts node source index.ts, which is running on 8080. And if I now refresh, you immediately see the exclamation. If I do change it to just one exclamation, you see if I refresh, changes reflects. Okay, great. So let's go back to our middleware. So to create a middleware, we're going to create two middlewares. One, we're going to create a not found middleware, or we're going to create an error handler middleware. So I'm going to say import here. These are the types that I want from Express. So that's one is going to be a next function, because we'll be using next, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we definitely want to use request and definitely want to use response. And these are the types that's going to come from our Express. We are going to import what's called an interface, which is, we currently have just one interface, message response. We are also going to create an interface that is going to be an error message. So let's go ahead and first create the not found function, right? I'm going to export this because we will need this function. And we're going to create not found, which is going to accept a rec and res. And Express actually allowed you to 3 parameters. It also allows you to do something called next. What next allows you to do is that if there's no request and you already send out response, so there's some errors with request, that you can call next function that will basically push the code to the next, when do you want to go next, the next path, the next code or something like that. So we'll be using this one. And as you can see here, it's saying that parameter rec implicitly has an any type. That's why we implicitly imported this request and response. So let's go ahead and add this. That's going to be request. Response is going to be a response type. And next is going to be next function type from here. So the first thing what we want to do, as you can see here, if I put some gibberish here, it actually just express boilerplate string, which is basically cannot get. We want to give some sort of like message that, hey, like not found or something like that. So we can actually create, we can also like give it like an HTML page or 404 or something like that. So let's go ahead and first set the status of this, and not found is always a 404 status. So let's put that, and let's go ahead and write the error message that we want to do, which is going to be a type of error. And here we can actually say not found. All right, and here we can actually pass in the rec dot, and as you can see here, we are now getting all our type, the properties that's available in a request. So this way, because of the TypeScript, you can really code really fast because you got the robust autocomplete. All right, so, and then what we want to do with this error, so now we are going to call this next function and pass this error. Okay, great. So in this middleware, the first middleware that we created is the not found middleware. And let's create another middleware. And this one is actually going to be export a function, and it's just going to be an error handler. And error handler will have an error that is going to be a type of error. And it's going to have a request that is going to be a type of request. And response, this particular response is going to be a response type that is coming from Express, but we can further customize this response, and I'm going to show you how. And the next one is going to be next function, like so. So as of right now, let's go ahead and return here, just write return, and let's work on the response that we want to create. So here in the interfaces, I'm going to create another file, and that's going to be called error response ts. And here I'm going to import the message response from message response, okay? Because I just want to add the same message string. I want to utilize this interface, which is gonna send, it's gonna be an object, it's gonna set a property called message and a string, but I wanna add something more to it if it's an error message, right? So I'm going to do export default, because that's the only interface from in this file I want to export. And I'm going to say error message should extend this message response. And here I want to add an optional property with a question mark and a colon, and that be a string type. Okay, so if there is an error message, this property might be there, might not be. If it's just a response, then it should just require a message of string. If it's an error, then it will also require a stack, right? So now let's go back to our middlewares. And here, we want this response is also receives a generic type, and this generic type is going to be, let me go ahead and import our error message from error message and then put this here, okay? And then in here it's going to actually, first of all, let's kind of figure out what is going to be the status code for this error. So let's do status code is equals to res.statuscode. If this is not 200, right? If the status code is not 200, that means something went wrong. Then give me the status code, whatever the status code that's returning from our response. Else, it's just going to be a 500 because it's a server errors, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and do res.json. And as you can see here, this will require an error message, which is going to be, what are the properties? We need the message here. So we're going to put the message that is coming from this error. So error dot message property. As you can see here, again, the TypeScript working. So in error has a message property, has a name property, and a stack property. So we're going to say message. And then we are going to have a stack property. And the stack is going to be error dot stack. Okay, so these are our two simple middlewares. One is our not found route and one is our error handler. So let's go ahead and utilize these two middlewares, and I'm going to show you how we can utilize this. In our API, in our app.ts, we are going to just underneath here, we are going to import everything as middlewares from middlewares function. And here we're going to create API use, the same thing as use. So as you can see here, this is the first step. The second step is going to use this routes, And then the third step here, I can use the middleware. So I can say middleware dot, the first one is going to be not found. Use this if anything happens, and then middleware dot error handler like so. So if anything happens, some errors happening or like not found or something like that, then it's going to go to our error handler here. Okay, so let's see if it works. So as you can see here, our nodemon restarted a bunch of time because we made a lot of changes. And here, if I refresh now, with that gibberish path, now you're actually getting a not found and then saying that, hey, this route doesn't exist. So our not found middleware is working as expected. To test the error handler, of course, you can do it yourself. Like you can create any type of like route that will throw a new errors or something like that, or anything happening, then you can actually test the error handler function for yourself. But I'm going to let you do that. All right, so the third thing is I'm going to do is another thing that you can test, or maybe I'll make another video on this one. I'm going to also add another file that's called database, and this is actually going to be a database, whichever or whatever database I want to use, right? There is Drizzle, and there's also Prisma, that is very ORM to work with SQL database. So if you want to use SQL database with your API, or if you want to use like a NoSQL database with you can put all the database logic into that particular folder. So we have our source, we have our routes folder, interfaces and database, and everything's inside there. All right, so we're almost done. So let's go ahead and write some test, okay? So let's go back to our package.json file, and here we would have to, I'm going to go ahead and stop my server for a second, and now I'm going to go ahead and npm install, and this is again going to be a dev dependency, and I'm going to install vtest. Vtest, if you don't know, vtest is written in Golang. It is same exactly, have all the APIs that Jest has, but it's much more faster. Okay, so I'm going to use vtest instead of Jest. You can use Jest if you want. And now here all I have to do is create a command, and that will be test. And I will go ahead and write vtest. So it's going to run vtest, just like Jest. If you have Jest, you will write Jest. Okay, so for this, let's go to our test file. You know what? We also have to do something else. We also want to add, and it's called super test. And super test is an HTTP client test. So we're going to add this one too. So I'm going to add super test, and super test, just like Express, also needs the types. So I'm going to add types. Super test like that. We will utilize super test in your test files. So in the test, let's go ahead and create, actually I already have the test folder. So here I'm going to create two tests. One is going to be our routes.test.ts file. That's going to test our routes folder. And another one is we're going to test is our actual app. Okay? So let's write our routes test. So in here, we are going to import, it's called request, and that's going to be coming from super test. We are going to import our app, because we need that. And that's actually going to be, let me take a look, yes, it's going to be in source and app, like that. And we are going to import, and this is coming from vtest. So usually on JS, you don't really have to import describe or it, but vtest you have to. So I'm going to say describe, and it is going to come from not node test, but vtest. All right, so let's write our first test. So we're going to say describe. And what are we trying to test here? We are trying to test a GET request in API-v1. So once I user makes, in this case, I am making a request, a GET request to this route, API/v1, I should get some response back. So that it's going to receive a callback function. I'm going to say it should respond with the JSON message, and what should it return? So for super test, the request, so we will have to do request, and what it's going to request is going to request the app to do the HTTP. And this request is actually going to return a promise. So we have to return this in order for vtest to work. So return request app. The first thing we'll do a GET request. And what the path is going to be API/v1 path. And then let's go ahead and set the accept. So you're going to say accept. What should it accept? It should only accept application JSON, and then it should expect a status code. Actually, it should expect content type, and I can add this like this, content type of JSON, and it should also expect status code of 200 because it should return something. If your API returns something, it sends you an OK message, right? Which is 200. I can also specify the message that I want. I'm expecting that it's going to get. I'm getting a slight error here. Let's go ahead and take a look what is that error is. Request app. Oh, sorry. I don't really need the comma because these are all perfect. That was it. So it's all chained up. Okay. So what we're testing, we are testing when we go to the app, right? And then we put this API v1, we should get this message called root API. So now all you have to do is run npm run test. And once we do this, you see that we have a failed test. Because as you can see here, our message that we want to expect is API with the lowercase I, but the message that our API returning, everything is capital. So we have a failed test, which is a good thing. That means our test is actually working. Let's go ahead and fix that. And by default, vtest also is in watch mode. So it's automatically going to run my test. And now I have one passed test. Amazing. Let's go back to our app test now. So let's create this. I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing. I'm going to do, in fact, I can go to routes and copy this. I can use this. So I need request from super test. I need app. I need describe it. And here, what we are describing, we want to test the app. And here we are actually going to check whether or not found works. Okay, not found message. Okay, so it's the same thing. It's going to actually go to, I'm going to just put in fake route. Should return as like a not found message. This should be an accept application JSON, content type JSON, and here we actually want to receive, let's go ahead and delete because it's not going to actually give me a message or anything, but I want this one to be a 404. Because as you can see here, our app.ts is using middlewares, that is error handler, and inside this error handler function, we are actually, in fact, are we setting this? Oh, we are not. So that's a good catch actually. So I'm going to say const res.status is going to be the status code. Why is that? Oh, not because I don't need to use a const here. Okay, save. That would come up in my test anyway, so app.test. So let's go ahead and, as you can see, it's automatically ran it and then 2 passed. We have 2 tests, 2 passed. So if I do something here instead of 404, 400, if I go back to test, you see that failed. So our test is working. Awesome, guys. So this has been it. I'm going to push all this code to my GitHub repository. The link will be in the descriptions for you to clone this down, and you can utilize this as a starter TypeScript code. You can use whatever database you like. You can create your interfaces. You can create your routes, as many as you want. But this is kind of like the basic Node Express API and to work with TypeScript. If this video helps you in any way, please let me know in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe if you want, and help share the knowledge on the internet. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.